Welcome to Dr. Kannan Pugarendi's channel.
Today we are meeting a celebrity, a dance celebrity, and I'm so happy to introduce. I don't have to introduce him; he's known to the people, and I have to bring Revanta Sarabhai. My association comes from a different aspect, but I'll bring that with our discussion.
Hello, thank you.
I would like to know why you did dance. Today, dance doesn't get to have that much amount of Indian forms, especially the indigenous forms. Do not get that kind of respect, recognition. And why should I do this dance? I have so many other things happening. What made you come into dance? With such a background from a creator of ISRO, which wherein you are running into space, why did you turn around and dive inside?
So the ISRO connection is, of course, my grandfather, Vikram Sarabhai. He happened to marry a young woman from South India whose entire life was dance. And that was my grandmother, Mrinalini Sarabhai. And when they got married, they moved to Ahmedabad, and my grandmother started an organization called the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts. So that was way back in 1949. And I was fortunate enough to have been born into that family, into that organization. And so I grew up literally surrounded by dance and music and theater. And in fact, some of my earliest memories are waking up to the sound of the taktakiri, the tak, 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 which is the wooden block and stick that teachers use to, play the rhythm. And that some of my earliest memories are waking up to that sound as a kid, and I had to go down from my house and walk across the dance floor and weave through the students to be able to go to school or to be able to get out of the house. So I think for me it was inescapable, the dance was all around me. And I must have been about 4 years old when I went up to my mother, who had also taken up dance professionally. And I said, do you mind if I join one of the classes? And they were quite delighted that this young 4-year-old boy wanted to dance. Yeah.
That was a transformation.
And I started learning and basically never stopped. I think I must have been about 14 when I decided that this was not just something that I liked, but this was something I wanted to do professionally.
So the ignition came on, I think, more intrauterine.
Yeah. I think nature and nurture both, because, I was surrounded by it, and now third generation professional dancer in the family. So
how many years now, if you calculate hers and yours, how many years your family has contributed?
Well, so my grandmother started in the 20s.
Okay, we are crossing about a century.
We're about 100 years into my family, into dance. Yeah.
So I'm not wrong in saying a celebrity, because when we take a tradition of a century into it, that's a huge contribution for a dance form, and that has not been appreciated and recognized, wherein very few people take up that as a professional career. There are people who dance also, but to take as a professional career, it's different.
So I think there's a couple of things there, right? One is that a lot of people can learn dance, but a lot of people don't have it in them to become professional, right? And I guess it's similar to sports. A lot of people may come and train in a sport, but how many of them have what it takes to be able to even go to the national games or the Olympics? So in that sense, it requires something, and it's hard to describe. Of course, there's talent, there's a lot of hard work, but there's also some kind of X factor, which is required for you to really get to that top level and make it professionally. And the other thing is, culturally, we've always considered dance and sport as extracurricular activities.
You hit it on its head. Now,
so parents are also not very encouraging to, for their kids to take these things up professionally. Yeah, it's a lot about academic. I think it's changing maybe, but
still in the early 1920s, that is when the development of art form could have found its because it was a different time, a different rule, and people were trying to preserve what was established before, and that is not an easy. And
Yeah.
how much she would have found difficulty in going to their teachers.
Correct. Yeah, she literally had to seek out teachers and convince people to be able to teach her, because it was not easy to break into that. There was, because they were also following a certain hierarchy and a certain tradition. You had to be of a certain community to be able to dance and so on. So
The parambara they
Correct.
call.
Correct,
And
yeah.
as you said very clearly, they may not teach you.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do with it? You learn, but you can't go and do
Yeah.
what they are doing.
Yeah.
Because you don't belong to that specifically the
Yeah,
community.
yeah, and there was a fear that the art form would get dissipated, it would get diluted, it would not be kept in its sort of pristine form.
Only one question on this. Did your grandmother feel that the guru gave it to the right person? Because not the grandmother, guru feeling, yeah, I gave it to the right person because he has taken it. Which how many countries? You just mentioned.
Yeah, no, as I was mentioning, so she was one of these people who, from a very young age, wanted to be a dancer. She in fact, I remember her saying she used to say, "I am a dancer," as a child. And this was a family which was full of mathematicians and lawyers, and they were all like, what is this black sheep of the family? But so she seeked out her gurus. She trained for hours and hours a day for year after year, and knew that it was her life. Went on in the 30s and 40s. She was one of the first classically trained Bharatnatyam dancers to popularize the form in the north of India, because she married my grandfather and moved to Gujarat. At that time, they didn't know what classical Bharatanatyam was. So she was one of the pioneers in that sense to popularize the art form in the north of India and subsequently in the rest of the world. In her life, she's traveled to more than 106, 107 countries.
Again, another 100 there. Oh my goodness.
She would tour all over North and South America, Europe, Asia, Russia.
So she planted, perhaps your grandfather was trying to plant the flag on the moon.
On the moon.
She planted on. I don't bother about the moon. I planted on.
No, and at that time, India was also a new country, so it was very much part of the cultural diplomacy to spread the idea of India, its values, its culture across the world.
I'm happy that I met. I brought this out because how will I ever know what your grandmother would have contributed to put an Indian flag? Because we always look at an Indian Olympic medal.
Yeah.
These are also medals. The medals that can never be, forgotten. Perhaps should be written in real history to be known to every Indian.
Yeah.
That there are various other areas where people have walked in and created they put their signature there as an Indian, and that is not ordinary.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. I'm the first person to do it. I'm really happy that I brought this out because I wouldn't have known otherwise, and anyone knowing from there may be so much written because it has to be spoken so often,
Yeah. Yeah.
repeatedly, perhaps to even I've heard. Now they will hear it again,
Yeah.
and perhaps whenever anyone talks about Bharatanatyam, they'll also talk about Bharatanatyam ma'am on her contribution to Bharatanatyam, planting the Indian flag in 106 countries and more, and taking it at a time where no one had ever even thought, and taking it
Yeah.
to Gujarat. Good. Now, having said that, as you are here with Spark on a mission to improve your quality of dance, I would like you to tell why did you ever come to Spark, and what was the reason?
So it started, in the case of Spark, it specifically started with an injury. And it was an injury that I got while practicing Bharatanatyam. It was a sort of inner knee injury, and I think it was some kind of twisting motion that created it. And it was, in fact, I was practicing for a performance. So as dancers, as professional dancers, we're trained to kind of find a way to just keep going, because the show is not going to get cancelled because of you, right? I mean, you can't afford for the show to get cancelled. because of you.
The Olympic doesn't stop.
Yeah,
You know, definitely.
yeah. I mean, you might miss out, but the event is going to go on, right? Regardless. So I plowed through and I continued and I finished my performance at that time. And already it was starting to feel better, but I had started to get this sort of feeling of a tightness, kind of a band of tightness and slight swelling. Um, and in fact, a colleague of mine who has been coming, Madhu Bhojwani, who has been coming to Spark, she suggested that I come here because typically what the trouble with medicine in India, but I think all over the world, is that when you go to a doctor's, a specialist, in this case, if I would have gone to an orthopedic doctor, they would have said, "Oh, this twisting motion is causing pain. Don't do it."
Okay.
Not realizing that by don't do it, it means I can't practice my profession. Um, and I've gone through many years of many orthopedic doctors and many allopathic doctors who have said, yeah, just avoid the things that cause pain, not realizing that that's my bread and butter.
Don't throw a javelin. Don't throw. Okay.
So for dancers in India, it's been, of course, a very difficult journey, and more recently, at least, there has been more awareness of this field that we were talking about, sports medicine, right? And perhaps that is closest for us to be able to tap into. And so to find somebody who, at least understands what a sports person does professionally and what they require their body to do, and at the level of professionalism that they rely on their body, I think that is already a close enough step for a dancer. And so coming to Spark in that sense was wonderful, because we had not met initially, but I met your colleagues who understood what it meant to use your body as an instrument every day to perform your activities, and to require it to do something which you have spent years and years training it to do. So I arrived, and your colleague Jobin started working with me. And initially, it was all about relieving the pain, reducing the swelling. Um, I think the understanding was that the muscles around the knee, in my specific case, are what needed to be strengthened so that it would take the load off the joint. So we started with some rehab. Over a period of a few weeks, the swelling started going down, as in this feeling of the tightness. And then as we got to a stage where things were sort of neutral or normal, we switched into, in fact, that is when we had met a few weeks into my rehab, and you said, okay, actually, you're fine now. So let's switch into more of a fitness routine rather than a rehab routine. And I've been continuing ever since. So,
see, commonly we don't, in India at least, we don't use the word dance medicine.
right.
Dance medicine is different from sports medicine because the dancer's requirement are unique. This is a specialty where there is the nearest can be maybe in gymnastics they have a routine fixed, but it's a routine. You can't literally go out of it.
Correct.
But here it can be the movement permutation combinations are unlimited.
Correct.
You are mixing them as you choreograph according to the demands made for the music and other things. So the training need to be functional, because most of us, even strength training is done. It's done in a plane, like you are doing a leg press machine.
Yeah.
It is in one plane, but dance is not in one plane. It's multi-planar movements. Let us say a triplane, move 3 planes. So naturally, we are moving in those planes in combinations, and your lower is taking so much of a load to support you through the movement pattern. So if we are not training those muscles optimally, the possibility of detraining or not training optimally, not moving to the requirement which the muscle can optimally perform. We are, because our demand is there, I will say I will do it. but actually the brain doesn't coordinate sync according to what you want, and where the muscle has to come to fire, where it has to relax, not to perform. And that too, you don't want muscle bulk. It's not like an athlete. It doesn't look good for a dancer to show your deltoid, your biceps. You're not looking at that. You want the movements happening in a smooth manner, fluid, and
Yeah, and the strength is functional. It's not for aesthetic in that sense, like a bodybuilder would want. A muscular.
the muscles are bad. They don't show that as though that they are strong. It is actually a misconception. And unfortunately, they are working for it. Today, we understand the bulk. When you see a Djokovic or Messi, where do you see the large muscle? They are performing what they need to perform. So dance medicine is unique, and I find if you had been given that opportunity to work with us, by that we are thrilled, because very few people like to give the time, because already you have less time, because I have to do so much.
Yeah.
And now I'm introducing, you have to do a warm up, you have to do a warm down, you have to have a strength training, you have to have a core training. You need to have specific to a choreography what alteration that could be made, which is unique. Normally outside in kind of ballet, they have a doctor to even allow you to get into a school. If you fail in the medical test, you don't get into the school. Here in our country, with a Natya Shastra 10,000 years old, I realized all of them come to dance. There is no restriction laid that you shouldn't dance. It's your heart that tells you you can be there. And no one is blocked. They have not selected them. Actually, they brought everyone. That is a beautiful concept. Now, having said that, how much of strength training or anything you have done in a dance form that you have learned, could be give me an idea of that?
So, like I said, I started learning dance when I was about 4, and till well into my 20s, the only kind of genuine physical training was through the dance. So it was the dance training, it was the warm ups that were part of that dance training. It was some yoga which was suited towards body conditioning for dancers. But I was always a very very skinny boy, and well into my 20s, I continued to be very skinny. Um, and I think at some stage I realized that upper body strength was something that the dance was actually not contributing to, because primarily in Bharatnatyam, you're in a squatting position, you're doing your, Aramandi and the Murumandi, which is going. So my thighs are very strong and my calves are quite strong, but my upper body is not doing any kind of resistance. So I started to feel like, okay, my legs look and feel quite strong, but my upper body is still feeling quite weak, or not weak, but skinny, I guess, let's say. And I think I had also started to learn about anatomy and about various sort of disciplines connected to dance and physical fitness, and realized that sort of strengthening the core required something in addition to the dance movements and performance aspects that I was doing. um, at some stage, I had started having some lower back pain, I had started having some neck pain and things like that, and realized that the dancing itself was not enough. That in order to keep dancing the way I wanted to, I had to add some additional protocols or some additional, conditioning to give my body the support that it needs to be able to then perform. So that is when I really discovered these other aspects of, strengthening the core, other kinds of strength training to help support the body. So it was much later in my career in that sense, although I was only 25 or something when I realized this. So in that sense, early enough, I guess, in my life.
Yeah, true.
But after a good 20 years of having done
From 4.
yeah.
So imagine if that was part of your development, so that it gives you much more endurance to perform,
Yeah.
and also adding to your capacity to jump higher, hold a particular posture, which
Yeah.
could make a huge difference in an output that you are expecting, and manifesting that,
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
that.
So I think it would have been incredibly helpful, and I think for many dancers, that knowledge earlier on in their lives and in their careers, I think would have significantly contributed to longevity of their careers, to reducing the amount of injuries that they would have incurred. I mean, all of us have incurred multiple injuries. It's part of, it's like a occupational hazard, like you would say.
Perfect. That's the right term. It's
Yeah.
an occupation.
But I wish, in a sense, I had discovered it earlier to be able to, do the conditioning and the training that allowed me to then work on injury prevention rather than rehabilitation.
True. Perfect. Again, another important statement: prevention.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. When I'm injured, I'll go and see the doctor.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the doctor.
Yeah.
That should be the goal. And if that's the goal, then we are talking about how the dancer continues to dance without any injuries and thereby contribute more time towards dance.
Yeah.
For that, the prevention mode is optimal. And so your warm up, your warm down, your strength training, your stretches, and the coordination required to bring them in the right amount,
Yeah.
admixed with your time available. Because when you're touring, it's like performing in the Olympics, you are not going to wait for any strength training at that time. So we need to squeeze in a few important exercises which are specific to your requirements.
Yeah.
That's what makes the dance medicine unique.
Yeah.
So we'll go around, we'll just see how we can use the basic equipment within the space, and then see, wow, we can do something different.
Sure.
And see how that can contribute to your Aramandi, Muramundi, your core, and it's more functional. We'll keep all this in mind.
Yeah.